Welcome back to Provision Homestead. We've compiled 7 of what we consider the top tips for new or beginning homesteaders. Our hope is that this list will encourage you, but also challenge you, especially if you're just starting out or thinking about jumping into homesteading. So without further ado, here's number 1. All right, tip number 1, start now. Education in 90% of cases does not substitute for experience. And you probably stumbled upon this video because you're looking for inspiration, or because you're still in the planning phase, or maybe you're adding on to your homestead and you just want to stay encouraged. But let me tell you this, no matter how much you read, how many videos you watch, or how many seminars you attend, you will never be on the same level as somebody who has actually done it. Now, I think part of this analysis paralysis that we see in America has a lot to do with this college culture that we have today. I mean, think about it. We have somebody who's going through regular grade school, who's learning just a very broad base of educational topics, math, reading, writing, arithmetic, history, science, etc. And then they're expected at the age of 16, 17 to then decide what it is that they want to do for the rest of their life and what college they want to drop $20, $30, $40, $50,000 on to get a piece of paper and a degree that's supposed to set them up for life. It sounds ridiculous when you say it that way, because it kind of is. I mean, I've gone through a lot of job applications for roles that I've been the hiring manager on, and I've seen so many people apply for positions, and I get down to their education and I see bachelor's degrees and master's degrees and all kinds of things, and I go, why are you applying for this job? But the reality of it is, how many of these kids go to college, spend thousands of dollars, or their parents spend thousands of dollars on a degree, an education to do something, and then later on either can't find a job because they don't have the experience in that field, or they do get a job in that field, do it for a little while, and then decide, I actually don't like this. So all I'm saying is this: before you go out, buy some land or buy a tractor or whatever it happens to be, really make sure that this is something you actually want to do before you make a big investment. In other words, go get your hands dirty first. Tip number 2, start small. Right now we live on 105 acres. I got this nice big tractor, and I'm actually out here supposed to be mowing all of this, but just taking a quick little break here to do this video. We're on 105 acres, but we didn't start out here. We actually started in an apartment. And what did we do in the apartment? Well, mostly we learned how to cook things from scratch. You see, if you want to grow your own food, that's only part of the equation. The other equation is that you need to figure out what you're going to do with it. How are you going to eat it, prepare it, preserve. And then we got a rental house with a little bit of a backyard, and we started growing things in containers, and we got a few chickens, just don't tell our landlord. And then we ended up buying our own house with 1/3 of an acre and a fenced-in backyard. So there we planted fruit trees and did raised bed gardens, and we did chickens for eggs and for meat, and we actually did meat rabbits in that property. And then 5 years later, after that, we actually sold that house and bought a house on 2 acres. And on that 2 acres, we really went crazy. We did ducks and tilapia, we did chickens, turkeys, pigs. We had a fruit orchard, goats, livestock dogs, meat birds at scale, an egg business, some solar powered deep freezers to preserve everything we were growing, along with canning and other preservation techniques, and of course some home fermentation. Well, 5 years after that, we sold the 2 acres, and here we are on 105 acres. But again, we didn't start on 105 acres. It was a 13-year journey, and we still have a lot more to learn. All right, tip number 3, don't try to do it all. It may be tempting because you're excited to jump in and do all of the things that you've been studying. If I can speak from experience, don't do that. Focus on a few things at a time. Get good with those things, and then add on other things, other enterprises, as you master those other things. For example, like I said before, start by cooking your own meals. You're gonna have to figure out what to do with all this stuff that you're eventually gonna grow, so you might as well start now with learning how to cook from scratch. And before you go digging up your front yard to put a market garden or put a food forest in, maybe you should just get some containers and figure out how to grow things in containers first. Before you start an egg business, maybe you should get a few chickens and figure out how to keep just a handful of chickens safe from predators. Basically what I'm trying to say is don't jump in and do everything at once. You'll just spread yourself too thin, and you'll be a jack of all trades maybe, but you'll definitely be a master of none. It is said that it takes about 10,000 iterations to master something, to become proficient in it. So trying to do 10,000 iterations of one thing is hard enough, let alone trying to do 10,000 iterations of 10 things or 100,000 iterations. Tip number 4, embrace failure. Not just accept it, embrace failure. G.K. Chesterton said, anything worth doing is worth doing bad. Joel Salatin has a twist on this where he says anything worth doing is worth doing wrong first. Dave Ramsey, the money guru, says that we should teach our kids about money. Why? So that they can make $5 mistakes now and avoid $50,000 mistakes later. You're going to fail. You're going to have to accept it. But much more than that, you're going to need to embrace it. Mistakes, they're often costly. So instead of being prideful and arrogant and trying to ignore those mistakes, you should instead extract whatever value you can from those mistakes and learn from them. Tip number 5, be willing to change or even start over. Now, this is different than mistakes or failures. This point is talking about things that you are doing that may be working just fine, but could be done differently or better. There's a story that's in one of Joel Salatin's books. I don't remember which one it is, but it talks about a child who saw her mom cooking a ham, and she noticed that before the mom stuck the ham in the oven, she cut both ends off of that ham. So she says, "Mom, why did you cut the ends off of that ham before you stuck it in the oven?" And the mom says, "Well, that's just the way that my mom always did it. I don't know why I do it." Well, unfortunately, Grandma had passed, so you couldn't ask her. So the mom suggested that maybe the child go ask her uncle. So the child goes over and asks the uncle and says, "Why did Grandma always cut the ends of the ham off before sticking it in the oven?" And well, the uncle, at this point, the great uncle, he had no clue. And so he sat there and he thought about it for a second, and then it dawned on him. So with a little bit of a chuckle, he stated, "Well, we didn't have much money, and we only had one pan to cook with. And that pan was too small to fit a whole ham in, so your grandma used to cut the ends off so it would fit in the pan." You see, we often start things with the resources and the knowledge that we have at the time, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you see, things change, and we need to be open to reevaluating everything, including things that seem to work well. That family in that story, they still had a ham every year. They weren't starving. And there didn't really appear to be any reason at all that they should change anything. But little did they know, they could have had even more ham, got more bang for their buck, if they would have simply asked the question, why behind their tradition, instead of just blindly following it year after year because it worked. And that becomes an important piece of tip number 6, which is this: commit to do everything slightly better each time. In conjunction with being willing to change, you must also be proactive about change. Constantly be on the lookout for ways to do things better. How can I do this faster today? How can I grow this better next season? Are there steps in this process that don't make sense? AKA, is there muda or waste in this process that I can eliminate? At my 9-to-5 job, I deal with a lot of workforce management with large volumes of tasks that need to be done and millions of dollars. So I went through process improvement training, Lean Six Sigma, got a green belt. And of all of the different tools and methodologies that I learned through that process, one of the ones that I think should be taught far and wide to everybody in every situation and every trade is the 5 whys. So how the 5 whys work is you go and you do something and you ask yourself the question, why? Why am I doing it? Why am I doing it this way? Why am I doing this step? And then after you answer that question, you then ask why again of your answer that you just gave to the previous why. And so you're stacking whys on top of each other, and you typically do this about 5 times, but you can do it less or you can do it more. But the goal is that you're getting to the root reason for why you're doing a certain thing. You might find that, hey, you have some really good reasons for some of the things that you do, that the reasons behind your steps are logical and they make sense. But then there's going to be other things that I guarantee you that you're going to get down to the real reason for your routine, and you're going to realize that it's actually not a good reason at all. You know, like cutting the ends off of a ham. And tip number 7, don't forget your why. And now I'm not talking about your why of why you do a certain process or do things a certain way. I'm talking about conviction. Why do you want to homestead? Why do you want to grow your own food? All of those things. Because let's be honest, homesteading, trying to farm, trying to grow your own food, it's hard. It's really hard sometimes. You know, like when you realize that you went into gardening tomatoes because you wanted to save money, but in reality, you're actually spending about $10 a pound on tomatoes per year to grow your own, between the fertilizer and the raised beds and the watering system and the soil. Yeah, or when an animal gets sick, or even dies, or a predator gets it. Or when the timer on the garden breaks and you don't realize it, and 20% of your plants die because they get toasted because they had no water. Or when the goats break the fence again, which that's happened multiple times. When the chickens dig up your flower beds that you just planted, or the rats get into your chicken feed and ruin it. All of these really stressful and very real moments may cause you to want to throw in the towel, sell the farm, and move back to the city. Unless you have a strong why. What is your why? Have you settled it? And we cover that exact thing in this video.